Hey everyone, so this is Josh Z for Terrible Otaku, and for my first video, we are just going to be going over my personal picks for the top games of the year. It's all just my opinions and thoughts. Some of these you probably have definitely heard of because they've been a lot in the gaming discourse and all that, and some you probably haven't. So hopefully you enjoy it, and it's interesting. So there's a few right off the bat I want to get into that I did not have the time to finish, and those games would be Indiana Jones and the Great Circle that came out. That's so far from what I've played of it, like I think 5 or 6 hours. It's a pretty fun game and just a surprising emphasis on stealth and exploring and all that stuff. A lot less Tomb Raider or Uncharted than you would have thought, but it's pretty fun. And then Stalker 2, Heart of Chernobyl. That is another just very intense game where it's all about just basically pushing you to the limits. Even on, I put in I think 14 or 15 hours already, and it's playing it on easy is still pretty hard compared to most like FPS type games that you would play, where you constantly got to be using medical items and bandaging yourself, and basically every encounter is like a life or death situation. As any Stalker fans will tell you, I'm sure it's supposed to be that way. One I did really enjoy but didn't get to finish was a gory Cuddly Carnage. That is just a really fun, kind of a wacky game, which is like a weird cross between like a Sonic or Mario type platformer with like the combat of like a Devil May Cry or hack and slash type kind of thing. And it's all cutesy graphics, but it's like super bloody and intense, and it's surprisingly challenging at times. Definitely a fun game. If you played a lot of older stuff, I would recommend that one for sure. And then the last one, the subject of much debate, Star Wars Outlaws, which I also didn't get to finish. I think I put in around 12 or 13 hours, and then better games came out and I was just playing those and stuff. That's one I'm not gonna, try and harp on it too much because I know a lot of people have already done that. I will say it's definitely, from what I experienced of it, it's kind of uneven for sure. Like there's parts of it that are really fun and feel like wow, like I am a scoundrel rogue type in a Star Wars universe, flying the ships and doing all the exciting stuff. And then there's parts with like the insta-fail stealth missions and just poorly planned and just weirdly designed stuff that doesn't make sense. They did address a lot of it apparently because of so much of the backlash where I believe they've updated a lot, and so there's not supposed to be those insta-fail ones anymore. So hopefully I can get back into it and enjoy it and finish it at some point. But so those ones are not going to be in my top game. So with those out of the way, I'm doing a top 6 just because I'm a weirdo. So for number 6 for me, it definitely would have to be the Silent Hill 2 remake on PS5 by the Bloober team. It's a great game. I don't know how else to say it. If you played the Resident Evil 2 remake or Resident Evil 4 remake, this is very much in line with that kind of thing where they take this old game from 10, 20 years ago and breathe new life into it and update it and change things around. So a lot of the stuff that was back then is kind of like awkward and clunky, doesn't feel that way now. And in the case of this one, Silent Hill 2, they actually expanded it quite a bit. Like it goes from being, I think the original was supposed to take like 7 to 8 hours to complete, and this new one took me like 25. So it's a pretty huge game, and there's lots of stuff to do in it. If you like survival horror with a bit of a psychological edge and kind of game that'll turn your stomach a bit on purpose at times, I definitely recommend it. And it's probably, I would say, from all that I've read about the old ones, it's probably the best way to experience the game. So yeah, I definitely recommend that one a lot. That's like an 8 or 9 out of 10 game for me right there. A lot of puzzle solving. Almost every level has like a puzzle you have to solve and look around. Might need some guides, I did, because some of it is a little obtuse and hard to follow for sure. Number 5, I would have to say, this is a game that I don't think got as much fanfare, really, as it should have. Banishers Ghosts of New Eden by Dotnod, the people who did the original Life is Strange, Vampire, and Remember Me, and it performed, I guess, really poorly sales-wise, but it's a very fun, to me, I thought it was 100% worth it. You can find it a lot of times now. It's on sale on PlayStation or Xbox for $30-40. It took me about 26 and a half-ish hours to finish, and I would say it's 100% worth it. I paid full price, but for sale, definitely, yeah, it's 100% worth it. It plays a lot like God of War reboots, with Kratos and Boy. It's basically you're just going around fighting these ghostly apparitions and trying to solve this mystery of why this town went all bad and what's haunting them and everything, this colony and colonial America, and it's really well done. It's an interesting story that holds your attention all the way through. It took, like, I think by the end of the game I only had like 15% of the map filled out, just doing the main quests and scenarios and stuff. So there's definitely a lot of bang for your buck in there, I would say, for sure, if you want 100% or something like that. But yeah, it's a well done story. It's a shame that it didn't sell as well, and hopefully it picks up at some point and things turn out better for them. So number 4 is going to be a game that I liked a lot. From what I could tell, the reviews were kind of good to middling kind of online. Visions of Mana, the new Mana game, which was, I guess, the first one in a while. It was the first of the game in the Mana series that I've ever played, and I enjoyed it a lot. I'm not the biggest JRPG fan, but I've played a few here and there. I would say, especially if you're a beginner and you haven't played a ton of these games, I very much recommend it, because the combat's fun, easy to grasp, not particularly difficult. Like, I played it on normal, and I think I had 3 or 4 party wipes in the entire game. So yeah, it's definitely not super difficult. As long as you always keep the current weapons and armor and lots of healing items, you'll do fine. It's a really fun game. The characters are just, it's one of those things where I think a lot of people will follow the story and feel like it comes off as very cliche or like been done before, kind of like standard stuff. But the characters are just, to me, they were fun. Are they stereotypes or archetypes or, cliches? A little bit, yeah. But they're very much just virtuous people that are trying to do the right thing and have to fight like an ancient evil, Which, again, I know it's about, like, sounds very cliche, but it's well delivered. The characters are likable. Some of the environments in this game are just jaw-dropping. Like, even though it has that kind of cel-shaded, very stylized look to it, they are just gorgeous environments. Like, I probably took 10 or 20 screen caps just of some of these, because I was so impressed by what was going on. It took me about 35 hours to mainline this game, get all the way through to the end, and there's still a whole endgame, post-endgame kind of chapter where you get to go around and like fight extra super strong bosses and all that stuff. So there's definitely a lot of content in there. I would say even at full price, it's more than worth your while, especially if you wanted to get into JRPGs and you aren't really sure where to start. And number 3 is probably going to be a game I feel like most people have not heard about. Kind of an indie game called Harold Halibut, which is a very interesting take. It's almost not as much a game as it is like an interactive movie / walking simulator type thing. It's like a weird mix between like a stop motion, Wes Anderson, indie movie, quirky vibe kind of thing going on. It's not going to appeal to everybody for sure. There's no like crazy shooting sequences or bosses or, slashing combos and all that stuff. It's very much up my alley, and I would say if you can stick with it, because the opening hours are a little bit mundane. It's just like busy work going around doing chores, but if you stick with it and try and get into the characters, I feel like it's a very rewarding story experience for sure. By the end, I was blown away. To me, a 9 or a 10 game right there. It's great. Again, the only bad thing I could think about is that you can't really lose this game. There's no challenge like at all. It's just playing through it and seeing how it goes. Good-hearted game, I would say. Definitely recommend it if you're looking for something a little different than most stuff out there. That one took me right around 12 hours to finish. I believe it is on Game Pass on Xbox right now. If not, it's usually selling for 30 or 40 bucks. Then number 2, a game that you've almost certainly heard about because it was the subject of a lot of discourse and stuff, with Stellar Blade. I just thought was a fantastic game. It's very fun. It's challenging. It'll make you gotta really get your timing and your parries down, but you're basically this cyborg or totally robot, I forget, girl named Eve who gets sent down to Earth to fight these monsters whose name escapes me at the moment. And yeah, it's just about basically exploring the areas, fighting guys. I would say it's very much like a Souls-like game that they just tried to put in a lot more of the typical hack and slash stuff into, with like lots of combos and power-up moves and things. It's fun. The gameplay loop, I would say, is very interesting. You get to just go around and explore and find stuff, and there's occasionally like light puzzle stuff in there and some shooting stuff. Just overall, it's a fantastic game. It's one of those where it's like, I can't really recommend a game like that more. The only downside, I would say, is that it can be very difficult, though they also do have an easy mode. Obviously the discourse where it's very much intended to be like kind of sort of the objectification, sexual nature of how some of the characters are in there. I think a lot of gamer type dude bros probably don't care or are for that, some people that might rub them the wrong way. So that's just something you gotta take into consideration. Definitely a fantastic game. And before we get to the final game, I gotta do my honorable and dishonorable mentions. For the honorable mentions, I have 2 games that I enjoyed a lot, well, to varying degrees. I just didn't think they had quite enough to make it into my top group in there. Space Marine 2. This was about 10 hours for me to mainline this game. I thought it was fun. There was a lot of buzz right when it came out. I'm not super into the Warhammer lore or the universe. Like, I don't play the tabletop or any of that stuff. My pretty much only exposure. I played some of Vermintide a long time ago, and then I tried to get into it when they did the Necromunda Hired Gun game. That game was, I don't know if they fixed it yet with updates and stuff, but at the time it launched, it was a mess. Like, that game was embarrassing. It was glitchy and just all over the place, and I think I played 2 or 3 hours and was like, yeah, no, I'm not finishing this. This game is a sequel to the one from back in the day on 360 and all that stuff. Space Marine, you got the same guy, Titus, coming back to fight more guys, more aliens. If you like that game, or you like Gears of War type kind of squad shooters, it'll definitely be up your alley. It's pretty entertaining. You can do co-op, and there's lots of scenarios for you to play through, and online multiplayer as well. Like, I enjoy it. I thought it was a good game, but it was just a little too, to me it lacked a little bit of uniqueness to it. It's very much like just a shooter game. It's fun, and I enjoy it, but I wasn't quite enough to my taste to put in the top, probably 7 or 8 out of 10 type kind of game to me. And the other one, which to be Slitterhead, released with almost no buzz at all. Only people that were really following this, or the creator who was one of the original Silent Hill creators. The whole concept in it revolves around you being able to jump. You're like a spirit, and it revolves around you being able to jump body to body, fight these monsters, the Slitterheads, which are like these weird alien guys disguised as people. And you basically, the missions go about like you're trying to find one, and eventually you sniff one out, and then you have to chase them around the area usually, and then it ends in like a boss fight. Almost every mission in the game plays in some form of that. It's a fun game. I enjoy it a lot. Like I said, I'd probably give it 7.5 or an 8. My only complaint is it's very much, I think they're selling it for like $39.99 or $40, something like that. And I would say it's worth it. Is definitely a bit janky when you play it. And there's only like 5 or 6 different actual environments in the game. And there's like 20 or 30 missions that you go through, and they basically just start you at like a different spot in those 5 or 6 different environments, or from a different angle. So you're exploring the same environments and playing through them quite a number of times, which can be, I thought it was cool and it worked, but I could definitely see it rubbing a lot of people the wrong way. And the combat in it is kind of like a funky, almost a Souls-like kind of thing, but not, I wouldn't say not nearly as hard, with a little parrying, and you slash guys and wait for your special moves to charge up, and then you gotta use the whole body swapping mechanic to get around and attack them as the regular people. Overall, it's a very unique game. I thought it was really fun. I enjoyed it a lot. I put in 16 and a half hours about into this game, and I did pretty much everything in it except there's a secret ending, which you basically have to get less civilian casualties on the missions, and I never finished that. But I did pretty much all the other stuff in there, and I recommend it if you want something a little different from some of the stuff out there. A lot of people say it reminds them of like a PS3 or PS2 game a little bit, just in how it plays and the style and everything. Odd vibes, I guess. And then the dishonorable mention have to go to Life is Strange Double Exposure, which is, by my approximation, almost easily in the bottom 2 games ever released in this series. They got everybody all hyped up when they announced Max Caulfield was coming back, because everyone loves that, myself included, loves that original game. I would say my favorites are probably the original game and the True Colors game. Besides the graphics, I would say, besides the graphics and the character models, the environments, which all look pretty decent in this game, that's probably worth at least 2 stars, a 4 or 5 out of 10. Everything else in this game is pretty much nothing of import. It very much feels like it's, and I would say based off the story they established, it's supposed to be the first installment, I'm guessing, in like a trilogy or in a series. And it introduces some of the characters in a decent enough way. Does not really go anywhere interesting yet, I would say, in this game. As with how the standard for these games and how so good some of them are, it's it's definitely disappointing. I won't harp on it too much and be too tough. That's one of those games. Hopefully the sequel is better. We'll see how it goes. I love Max Caulfield as a character, and for my number one pick, which some of you may have guessed, it's probably one of, if not the most talked about game this year for 2024. I would have to go with Black Myth Wukong, which is just, it's an exceptional game. It's crazy to me that the people who made this, Game Science I believe is the name, they pretty much mostly made like mobile like games before this, and then they finally come through with their first big budget, big expansive title, and it's fantastic. Like, this is to me a 9 or 10 out of 10 game. It's, I don't know how else to put it. It's a lot like Stellar Blade in that it's kind of a Souls-like, but they punched it up with action game combos and that kind of stuff in there, but it's great. I'm not super familiar with the original backstory or basis for Journey to the West and all that stuff, which I think could be the only negative thing in this game, is that probably a lot of Americans or people living in the US only know Journey to the West is that was the basis for Dragon Ball. But you might not be familiar with the specific lore. But the way the game presents it, even regardless of how much you know, it's still very interesting and engrossing. And like, but after every area, you get like this animated skit, or animation, I shouldn't say skit. It's an animated video that shows you kind of the background for the bosses and the characters you fought, and it's just fantastic. The graphics are gorgeous. There is so much stuff to find in this game. Like, I think there's like 90 or 100 bosses or something. And you can pour hours into this game. I did get the secret ending, which you have to, do a little extra stuff to get. I put like 52 hours into this game. I think they've said they're working on DLC, and the game is so good that like as soon as they drop DLC, I would hop right back in with no reservations. It's just great. The characters are fun. The combat's interesting. It's challenging, but I would say if you work at it and, try and use all the stuff that they give you, all the options, and level up your guy and the items and everything, it's not as hard as it seems. It's definitely doable. I don't consider myself to be a super skilled player, and it's pretty solid. Overall, a fantastic game. I would say it's easily probably my game of the year. Cinematic, it's just great on all counts. So those are my top 6 and some miscellaneous games of the year for 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe you get something out of it or some ideas for stuff to try. And yeah,